Okay, I'm going to tell y'all an embarrassing story. Some of you know that I grew up as a pastor's kid in a little West Texas town in the Panhandle. But you may not know that one of the highlights of my year each year was going with my family to the annual gathering of the Baptist General Convention of Texas, or as we just called it, convention. We went to convention every year in some exotic location like Dallas or Houston, or one year Corpus Christi. That was the best one because of the beach, of course. I don't ever remember coming to Austin. I don't know why, but in any case, this small town girl got to see the big city, and I would fill bags and bags of free pens and notepads and candy from the booths at the exhibit hall. I'd have to choose what to take home with me and what to put back. I would listen intently at dinner tables to whatever convention drama was brewing that year. I would imagine myself up on that stage as a committee chair, or maybe even a speaker someday. I was a weird kid. Okay, I'm still a little weird, I get it. But one year, and I remember this so vividly, I was perusing through the Baptist college and seminary booths. I was maybe 15 or 16 at the time, but I knew at that time that I was called by God to preach, so by gosh, I was going to learn about my educational options. One of the booths had a 9x11 flyer, landscape orientation, with the header, ministerial pathways, or something like that. I started on the left with a box that said high school diploma, and then a line led from there to BA in Christian Studies. And then I think the 5 or 6 Texas Baptist schools were listed. From there, the path moved to Master of Divinity. And then there was a fork. You could travel one way to do the PhD, which was for teaching and preaching, I learned from the flyer, or another way for the Doctor of Ministry for just pastoring. And this was exactly what I needed, a map. I dug out one of the many, many free highlighters I had collected and found a corner of the exhibit hall to sit in and focus, and I got to work charting my course. It felt like a divine light was shining down on me, like an epiphany, perhaps. My whole life laid out in front of me, or at least as much as I could imagine. I'd go to Howard Payne, like my dad did, for my BA, and then I'd go to Truett or Logsdon for my MDiv, and then at the fork, I would choose the road less taken, the PhD, so I could have the option of teaching. When I retired from the pastorate, I was thinking far ahead, y'all. With my map in hand, I knew what I had to do. I could imagine myself preaching, writing books, becoming the first female president of the BGCT. That was the dream. That was the dream. And for those of you who are not enmeshed in denominational politics, first of all, good for you. You are better off. But for context, the BGCT, the Baptist General Convention of Texas, is one of the many Baptist groups that has kicked UBC out over the years. But I saw my star, I charted my course, and I followed it pretty closely for the next 20 years. That's a much longer journey than the Magi's 2 or 3 year trek to Bethlehem, I might add. But my journey, like theirs, has taken me to places I couldn't have imagined at the start. Little epiphanies along the way, since that big one in the convention hall. Little epiphanies have shifted my understanding of my calling, of my faith, of the path that I'm on, and led me to places that are much more beautiful and wild and mysterious than what I saw for myself as a 15-year-old. Today we are celebrating Epiphany, the day in the church calendar when we remember the Magi's journey to Judea from the east, their encounter with King Herod along the way, their meeting with and giving gifts to the Holy Family, their defiance of the powers that be in order to keep a poor child safe, their courage to set out on another unknown path for their journey home. The word epiphany means revealing or seeing, manifesting a new vision. Sometimes we think of epiphanies as these big light from heaven clarifying moments. The light at the end of a long journey when we finally reach the star that we've been chasing. But for the Magi, finding the star is only the beginning. And their road ahead is anything but clear. They've come all this way, and what they find is not at all what they expected. Poverty instead of a palace. Not the celebratory end to a long journey, but the anxiety-inducing beginning of another one. Today on Epiphany Sunday, yes, we can absolutely celebrate the big, shocking epiphany that is the Christ child being revealed to the Gentiles through the Magi. The Magi who represent the farthest corners of the earth. In this story, God scoops up all people in her arms and says, yes, I am for you. You are my beloved no matter what the political and religious leaders say. That is a big deal. That is a big epiphany. And we can celebrate the big epiphany moments in our own lives too. But let's not forget all the little epiphanies that the Magi must have had on the way. The little epiphanies that shift their direction afterwards, sending them home by another way. Even when we have a map, like I did, even when we follow it to a T, we don't always end up where we thought it would lead. The destination is almost never how we imagined it. Beloveds, that doesn't mean that you didn't follow the star. That doesn't mean that you're lost. When we get to the end of our map, or when the maps we have created seem to fail us, the truth is that our journeys, just like the Magi's, are just beginning. God calls us home. God calls us forward in another way. God leads us on an unfamiliar path. God is with us in uncertainty and doubt and fear. When we don't have a map, we make the path by walking it. So, when your travel plans are rerouted, or you are anxious about not being where you wanted to be, where you thought you would be, when you feel uncertain about the road that is before you, and y'all, who doesn't right now? I definitely do. Know that we are following in the footsteps of those brave travelers from the east, making our way home with each step that we take together, 1 foot at a time. One day, we will look up and find ourselves in places more beautiful and wild and mysterious than we ever could have imagined. Thanks be to God. Amen.